Okay. It's been a while since I've made a video, about 3 months or so, and I've wanted to cover a topic like this for a while. This is kind of really a few different topics, because I've seen some people talking about on the Discord, how do you defend against Kai, how do you run offense, what does Kai's pressure look like, how do you blah blah blah. So this is a little bit of that, but I want to keep it pretty general. So I'm going to talk about the big picture goals of all this sort of stuff. So let's start off. This video is about understanding pressure in Guilty Gear Strive specifically. It's not huge, but it's kind of a universal fighting game video, and I haven't really seen anyone doing this. So let's talk about it. The first thing I want to do is, when you're thinking about understanding pressure for a particular character or something, you're always thinking about what is their goal in pressure. Like, obviously it's to hit you and open you up in some form, but like, what is their actual dream scenario? Like, is Kai's dream scenario to go like pop pop? No, it isn't. He'll do that if he has to, but nah, it's not really what he wants to do, right? Is it to throw you? Well, some people might say that, but it also is like, well, that's 80 damage, right? It's not really it's not the ideal scenario, right? That's a pretty good situation, but it's not like the best thing ever that he wants to do. The thing that his goal is to get you to fidget into a option, like he wants you to fidget into an option that leads to a lot of damage, right? He's wanting to do something that he wants you to fidget. He wants you to pick a defensive option and then call it out, right? He wants you to press a button into his frame trap so that he can kill you, right? That is what he wants. So it is going to be and so he's going to go about doing that in different ways. Now, that varies character to character. So Nagoriyuki, his goal is obviously also to open you up, but he has kind of a side goal that is as important, which is to land a bite. So he actually wants to scare you into just blocking him so that he can bite you. And then once he bites you, after a bite, Nagoriyuki is so powerful, right? He is undeniably the best character right after he lands bite. So that's really what he's trying to do. He's trying to get that brief moment of God mode where he can spend all his blood and then spend it again and then still be okay. That is what his goal is, right? Some characters' goals are just to return to their strong neutral. Some characters' goals are to land 2D specifically so they can blender you. But it varies character to character. Like, what is their dream scenario, right? Sometimes it's to side switch. Sometimes it is to do other stuff. Like, if Kai is cornered, well, his dream scenario might be to side switch, right? That might be the best thing that he can do. And so you'll start thinking about how is he going to access that goal, right? It also might be to corner carry, right? They're back to the corner, or something like that. So, what is a character trying to do in a certain situation will help you understand what sort of thought processes they're going into and how to adapt to it. Now, characters will attain their goals by ways of conditioning, and they're going to condition with a few different things. So they're going to condition with different types of pressure. So first and foremost, a character that is trying to throw you might be doing a lot of tight pressure that will get you to sit there and block it and take it. So tight pressure is something like this, right? It's something like that where if they do any defensive option, they will blow them up, right? It will hit them for doing anything except blocking. So they're trying to get you to block so that they can throw you. Some characters, particularly Nagoriyuki and Potemkin and Kai and Mei sometimes do this, and strike throw characters, sometimes that is their goal. But it varies quite a bit. Now, the ways that you would deal with that, obviously, are you would just block, right? Or you would do an option that is fuzzied, which is safe to their option, like, hey, whatever. Oh, yeah, he's doing the... Right, they're doing... You know, that kind of thing, where each different gap, they did try to backdash, it just didn't actually come out. So that would cover a few different things, but also be like, hey, now, tight pressure, why would you ever not want to do tight pressure? Well, if someone is blocking, tight pressure is not what you should have done. That's because tight pressure ends, right? Whatever it is, it ends. It has a clear and defined endpoint where it returns to neutral or is punished sometimes. And so it is kind of a conditioning habit where you're trying to get someone to just block more by doing, you know, right? And that will condition someone to block or fuzzy and just do that for a long time, and it will kind of get people to tunnel vision to the point where you can close out a round with something else. Now, the next type of pressure that I want to talk about is what I would call greedy pressure. And greedy pressure is something that will... let's leave it on 3 and then do none. Greedy pressure is something like this, right? Where there is some defensive options that beat it, but it doesn't inherently end. It's like stagger pressure, right? It has specific defensive answers, but it doesn't inherently end. This pressure is quite good at getting people to start to try and do something, because if they feel that if they can't do anything, then if they do nothing, then it will just go on forever, right? This is kind of what stagger pressure is. So if Kai does like, right, that second one's a frame trap, and you know, that doesn't end, right? That gap, if you don't do an option, that gap will not end. Now, it does beat some defensive options, like, let me say, if, you know, someone does jump, well, they still block it, right? It's still, pressure is not only over, it does keep jump maintained, and it outright, oh, that's not what I want to do. Not Roman cancel, I want to backdash. And it does outright answer some defensive options. So, greedy pressure, like that kind of thing, will beat some defensive options, but not all. And it will force someone into picking a specific defensive option, often. So like this kind of thing, well, that might condition someone to backdash or jump, but not condition them to press a slow button, or to press something like that. Whereas like something like this, well, hey, they backdash, well, they're still in pressure, right? That sort of option, or in some cases, at closer ranges, that doesn't end the pressure at all, but it also will cover a slower option, and will outright hit those options. Which well, whatever. Man, people's fuzzies are terrible if this there it goes. So, this will cover some defensive options in a very big way, but also lose to others, right? It will condition someone to say, hey, they might want to do a specific answer, like mash out. And so, well, if you can condition someone to with your greed, great. And greedy pressure is good because it also lets you see what someone's going to do, right? If I do this, right, I saw how he answered. It beats this kind of mash to be low profiling, right? It goes under it, but it will lose to a 2K mash or a stand, or let's do stand K, right? It'll lose to a different kind of mash, right? So it will require them to mash a particular thing a lot of the time. Like, let's say I do this, right? Guess what? That still did that. It also will beat, you know, pretty much any sort of short button mash, right? You know, those sort of greedy options beat some defensive options, but not all. And that conditions them to do specific things. I spent a long time kind of establishing this and just sort of showing some different options, because these are things that most mid-level players don't ever do. And they are very strong. So stuff like this, where you do close slash, run close slash, that's really good against someone who is blocking. Right? If I do... Oh, apparently I fat-fingered taunt. Okay. If I do something like this, you know, these options are good. They are greedy, but they're good. And then the last option that I want to talk about is... The last option that I want to talk about is the risky option, which is the fastest way to condition someone, which is something like this. Now, why I call it risky is that if they do answer it, even like it will lose to pretty much every defensive option, right? If I have him mashing, it will beat it. If I have him backdashing, it will beat it. If I have him jumping, it will beat it. If I have him fuzzying, it will beat it. But it does hard call out one specific option, which is blocking. So similarly, that kind of thing is very good. But also, it loses to most things, right? Well, it catches backdash, but you get the idea. Has a bit more of a greedy option, right? So those sort of things are, they cover fewer options, but are, they do sort of force someone to either make an action or die. Whereas a greedy option, if they don't make an action, it just resets. And that's kind of what I think of as the key difference. Is that a risky option will open someone up if they do not take decisive action, whereas a greedy option might open them up if they take decisive action, but it also won't open someone up if they do nothing, right? It will just kind of be like, hey, you could have escaped, right? Like, hey, you could have escaped, hey, you could have escaped, hey, you could have escaped, you know, all of those sort of things. And they do pester people into it, but inherently they do not open someone up. But at the same time, they have to have kind of precise answers sometimes. Whereas a risky option, generally throw, will lose to a wide variety of options, but forces them to do something. And so that is the one that players like to... People like to be thrown so little. It conditions someone so fast to start doing something. Let's say you throw them on their wake-up. People are going to start mashing on their wake-up. And it's like, oh, well, that's easy to beat, right? Like, let's say you do, like, throw... Let's say you just throw them on their wake-up, right? Then they're going to be like, oh, no, I need to act, right? They're like, I'm going to die if I don't act. And so they will start usually responding a lot faster to a risky option to answer it, because not only does it open them up and force them to, it also will get them to, it also will kill them if they don't, right? But it also will be, they want to do it even more because the reward for doing it is pretty high, right? If someone does backdash this throw, like, or if they do, like, you throw them and then you go for a throw, right? You throw them, and I can't actually do this. And you go for a throw, and they backdash it. They get a big fat punish and a side switch, and your pressure's over, and their win condition started. Right? It's a big reward, so they want to do it. But at the same time, because it's a big reward for them, you want to use this pretty sparingly. Even if you have now risky options, can become a lot safer with meter. So obviously, throw PRC is very strong for this reason. It allows you to force someone into getting hit while also, being safe, right? Like, throw PRC is quite strong. Because if they did backdash, then, like, let's say you do, let's say I do, right? Pressure continues. Then it is, meter can change all of these dynamics, but this is kind of the basic other stuff. Now, the last thing to talk about is if you have several options, how do you choose which one to do, and how do you choose risk-reward for a given situation? So, against someone who's doing a risky option, you can do immediate stuff, but sometimes overly responding to a risky option makes players who do them a lot more ready to do the hard callouts. Like, let's say you mash backdash every single time Nago goes //. Well, Anago's going to pick up on that pretty quickly and start opening you up for trying to answer these options really strongly. So, when doing risk-reward, you want to pick low commitment options at first, unless you have a good reason not to, that allow you to answer as many things as you can, while also being like, the thing that I lose to is the weakest option, right? So let's say you have a fuzzy backdash mid-screen versus Kai. Right, you have a good timing for that, right? Now, Kai can call this out for pretty decent damage, right? They can continue that combo. Like, let's actually do that real quick. Right, Kai can call it out, but that's not what Kai starts with, and so most of the time, he's going to do something like that. right? And the reward just isn't that high, right? He might do something like this, where, oh hey, they just get away, right? Oh, pressure's over, right? They might do something like that, where a fuzzy option is, you don't take very much damage if you're wrong. But if they go for like that kind of thing, you still get out and you still deal with it. So options that are risk-reward are ones that only lose to very specific things, but also don't give them access to high rewards. That they have to do very specific call-outs to most of the time. Now, obviously Kai has a lot of ways that he can call out specific things, but these options are generally pretty strong, and so you think about how they access damage and what you do them, because when you're playing defense, they're having to adapt to you as much as you adapt to them, right? It's a full way. So if you have a simple answer, like let's say you do FD and then backdash, that is a very there it is, FD, right? FD backdash, right? That's really strong a lot of the time, right? That beats a lot of different options. So that makes him not able to do this sort of stuff. Or FD jump or something like that. These type of options really do hedge your bets in one way or the other that don't allow them to do, all the things that they want. Like FD is very strong against strike throw characters because it allows them to have to do very specific types of pressure to open you up still. Because if they don't, like if you don't do that, then it requires them into a very particular situation. So let's say you're FDing. Kai's pressure just ended. There was no risk, right? That was not a very big deal, and it did just kind of deal with it for only the cost of a little bit of meter. So when looking at these sort of things, you generally want to think, how do they access damage, and pick options accordingly. Like, do I fuzzy backdash against every character? No, I don't fuzzy backdash against Baiken, like, ever, because almost all of her frame traps will cover, almost all of her stagger pressure will cover it for good damage, right? I'm much more inclined to do something like fuzzy mash or fuzzy jump against Baiken, because let's say she does close /2H, or something like that, the jump is going to get over the 2H, but the backdash won't. So you answer more options more easily, and that will be kind of the way to do that. Now, risk-reward is hard to internalize and hard to explain in good detail without getting into just nitty-gritty situations, and that's not really what I want to do with this video, so I'm going to cut it there. The big takeaways are how tight, greedy versus risky, and moving on with that sort of idea. I hope this was helpful to some people. I don't really see people talking about this type of big picture stuff, but this is how I understand pressure in fighting games generally. Now, it varies game to game quite a lot, but this is kind of where this is generally what I think about it. So I hope it was helpful. I'm going to watch this back, and if it was decent, then I'm going to upload it. If it was not, you will never see this. Bye for now.